There we go. Hello, everyone. So first of all, a big thank you to Tom and the team. I think they deserve a round of applause. They've been doing this for 10 years or more. And really, I have to say, I've not come to this event for that period of time, but you know, just the demand of our customers and the number of people talking about what a great session this is made this the right place for us to be. So well done to Tom and the team, first of all. So my name is Rakesh Sangani, for those of you that don't know me. I'm the chief exec of the best company that you've never heard of. That'll be hard for me, but I will do that. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm the chief exec of the best company you've never heard of, which is a boutique consultancy that just focuses on GBS and shared services. We're about 100 people strong with offices in Poland and the UK and across the world. So I know when I first came across the topic of automation, it was when a Blue Prism salesperson about 10 years ago approached me, and I'm a chartered accountant by background. And he said to me, Rakesh, the whole of finance will be automated. And I said, that's rubbish. And actually, that made me really cynical around automation at the time. I thought, look, these RPA guys are creating all of this hype, and actually, it's a bunch of BS. It doesn't really, you can't automate the whole of finance. I think anyone who's an accountant recognizes there's subjectivity, there's judgment. That's not the case. And then it took me a few years. But eventually I went from being a cynic to saying, why don't I have a play around with this technology? Why don't I experiment? And I very quickly moved from cynic to evangelist. And that's where I see myself today, you know, with a background in working in GBS and shared services for over 20 years. I think it's a really exciting space. I look at the room around me and I see 100 plus very lucky people, because you're in the center of this automation space today, which is just changing so quickly, and it's so cool. And let me tell you, I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. It's a lot more exciting than Lean Six Sigma. There's a lot more things that you can do. So look, one of the things I wanted to do was kind of come up and inspire you a little bit. So one of the things that inspire me today around this space is actually the AI that exists. And the best way to talk about this, I think, is to talk about AI-generated art. So what do we mean by that? We mean that there are AI engines that actually create art pieces. And let me tell you what that doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that they do a copy and paste. So don't take a bit of art here and a bit of art there and a bit of art there and just mash it all together. It's actually creating innovative new pieces of art. And the reason this is relevant is because all of a sudden what you see in front of you is Jason M. Allen winning an art competition in Colorado in the US by using AI-generated art. So there was a massive debate. So he used a tool, and these tools you can have a play around with yourself. The biggest two are Midjourney and DALL-E 2. You can go in and you can say, I want a picture of Tom wearing a hat in a jester's costume. And it will try and generate that picture. And you'll say, actually, I didn't like that. I want bigger shoes. I want a taller hat.
Hair on the head.
I want a bit of hair on the head. And it will go ahead and it will start to kind of listen to your question and build that art appropriately. So what's interesting is more and more organizations are looking at these types of things where they recognize that AI is not just creating and displacing, but it's augmenting that human experience. And art is a great way to kind of see that in life today. I was reading in the Financial Times 2 weeks ago that a beauty company was using the same technology to identify what a good-looking Caucasian male, Caucasian female, Indian female, actually the Indian male looked a lot like me, They're looking at this, they're using this technology to build a view of what do these fanciable males and females look like, so we can build our beauty strategies around that. So there are real-life use cases of these technologies, and this is a really exciting space because a lot of this is building and evolving very quickly. Linked to that, I guess, is ChatGPT. How many of us have heard of ChatGPT? Look at that. And I'm sure many of you are accountants. I've got a bunch of accountants who know about the latest wave of technology. Isn't that exciting? ChatGPT was only released in mid-December. In mid-December, and it's the biggest thing that everyone's talking about right now. So the change around automation is actually, when RPA kicked off, and we all talked about RPA is the next big thing, there was a lot of talk about job losses. There was a lot of talk about, okay, it replaces humans. But actually, where the market has moved to is, firstly, it's not just about RPA. It's about having an ecosystem of tools and technologies, of ML and AI, chatbots and BPM and service management tools, etc. And it's about augmenting the human to enable you to do your job better. So actually, there's an interesting report done by the World Economic Forum, you'll see it there, that automation will lead to a net creation of 12 million jobs. So yeah, there will be job and roles impacted by automation, but actually that will be outweighed by the number of new jobs, new exciting things that are being created. So I would ask you all to kind of think about that. So if you know about ChatGPT, play with it. Because the key thing in today's market is not finding the right tool. Actually, that's the easy bit. It's using that tool to deliver value in your business. It's playing that role of a business analyst. It's making it relevant for you. So everyone knows about ChatGPT, but how many use cases do we have for GBS and shared services? That's a more difficult question. So with that in mind, what do we see as the state of automation today in GBS and shared services? Well, we see it moving from just about one tool. It's not about, okay, I have UiPath or Blue Prism. Great. It's really about having a way of operating and a way of innovating. A way of running your business, which is the way of operating. It's run the business. And a way of innovating, which is change the business. What new things can you be doing? And how can these tools and technologies help you innovate more? It's about moving from tactical to transformational. Look, we all know RPA is great, but it can save you 0.3 heads here, 0.4 heads there, 0.7 here. Maybe you get to 1.2. Yeah. It's useful, but it's not necessarily transformational. If you want to look transformational, you need to look at your end-to-end process and maybe the combination of technology to help you get those transformational actions. And making it more strategic. So less tactical and more strategic is certainly the direction that best-in-class businesses are going to when it comes to automation. Now, I could spend another half an hour just on this slide, because this is what we describe as the Hyperautomation toolkit for GBS and shared services. Now, I think the most interesting part of this picture actually is the left-hand side. Because before you know what you're going to do with automation, especially in GBS and shared services, you have to think about what are you doing with your ERP. Because actually, if an ERP, if SAP or Oracle solved all of the problems you wanted them to solve, then your need for these tools and technologies would be a lot less. Actually, a lot of the fact that they exist is to the detriment of the core systems we're putting in place don't actually achieve what we would like them to achieve. So what we think is important as you think about the mix of tools and technologies is first work out, okay, how far do I want to go down my ERP route? Do I want to have SAP vanilla across the whole organization? Or actually, do I want to have SAP plus Blackline, plus Trintech, plus HighRadius, plus OpenText Vim, plus Basware? So I've got those point solutions in place. And then maybe I don't need any RPA, I don't need any chatbots because I've got all of these tools and technologies. Or you say, I'm going to minimize my cost. I'm just going to have core ERP, and then I'm going to have a hyperautomation toolkit in place. So there's a big strategy question there, which is, how do I use my ERP versus everything else? And then that everything else. So, we all know about RPA, so I won't talk about that. But there's a whole load of other tools and technologies in that toolkit. So process mining is probably growing in the last few years the same way RPA was 5 years ago. And how many of us have adopted process mining in the room? Maybe I can see hands in the air. Okay, less than half of you. So process mining, actually, we think it was born out of the RPA industry. Because the biggest problem with RPA was it found that people didn't know their processes very well. They thought, actually, invoice processing is really easy. We just do it one way. We just process an invoice and then pay an invoice. But they found out that actually they do it in 100 different ways. That happy path that they automated only covered 10% of the actual process. And so the return on investment wasn't as good as it initially seemed to be. So process mining actually gives you that detailed information around your system. What it does, for those of you that don't know, is it takes the event logs from your ERP or your CRM, and it aggregates them all together and gives you the process of what people are actually doing, because you can see that step by step on your systems, and it gives you that data, and it gives you these great visualizations. So definitely, if you're not using process mining today, it's worth looking at to get to know your processes better. The other one I'll touch on here is task mining. How many of you are using task mining today? 1, 2. Okay. So task mining we see as the emerging technology in 2023. Yeah? So task mining, not everyone likes it because it records your screens. So what happens is you can give it to a team, AP, AR, hire to retire, whatever, a team of people doing a similar activity. And you put these agents on their laptops, and it records their processes, screen by screen, everything they're doing, over a period of, let's say, a month. So there's a whole load of data there. And then that gets thrown into an AI engine. And the AI engine says, okay, based on this analysis, this is what you should automate. This is where your standardization opportunities exist. And these are maybe some process improvements that you want to carry out, because Shemek does this very well, but Marcin does this very badly. You may want to standardize the process. And here are maybe some training opportunities as well with your people. So task mining we see really relevant for GBS and shared services to find out what your people are really doing and what your processes really look like. But there's a whole range of tools and technologies here, and I just picked out some of them. The sexy stuff around AI and ML is also really relevant in GBS and shared services. Everyone always asks me for tangible examples of AI and ML in GBS and shared services. So let me give you a few. One is duplicate payments. Yeah, so having technology that goes into your system of record and identifies the probability of duplicates. Everyone thinks they don't have duplicates. Oscar and the transparent team will tell you that you probably do, because PwC might also be set up as PricewaterhouseCoopers, might also be set up as a one-time vendor in your system, and these problems can occur. So that actually uses AI and ML to identify the risk of a duplicate. Cash application is another one. looking at how you've applied cash historically and building algorithms for each of your customers based on historic treatment. That's a common one, again, in GBS and shared services to help you automate your cash applications higher. Then you've got things like credit risk. So using D&B databases together with your own customer experiences to set credit limits for your people. And then you've got things like dynamic forecasting. So most businesses are terrible at forecasting. They forecast their sales, but salespeople are really, really positive and really aspirational. So sometimes there's a level of over forecasting there. So there's technology that takes that into place. It looks at how every single person has historically forecasted their numbers, and it gives you an algorithm, an equation, and a learning model to help you improve the way that you forecast. So AI and ML is very real in your businesses. And the other key thing around this, you'll see, there's a series of tools and technologies there that fix particular problems. The other thing to bear in mind is they don't have to be expensive. So chatbots is a great example. For a chatbot, you can have a really great, amazing chatbot that answers every single question you have in HR. Yeah, that's going to cost you about $1 million to have something like that. You know, IPsoft are great. They have a tool called Amelia. That's a wonderful tool that probably does some of that. But you can also get a chatbot for about $10K to just resolve payroll queries, for example, and it sticks to the top 5 payroll queries. So actually, with a lot of this technology, it doesn't have to be expensive if you know what you're doing. And that's the key thing. And if you make your process simple, and if you focus on the 80-20 rule and not try and automate everything. The other thing to watch out for here is the piece on top, is the digital strategy. So what we found is a lot of organizations start with these POCs, which I don't think is a bad idea, but then they reach a phase where they've done so many POCs, and they've got lots of disconnected automation in different places. So what we would always recommend is put in your digital strategy for GBS and shared services and connect the way that you automate. Yeah, so link your RPA with your service management tool, with your chatbot, so it's all an end-to-end integration triggered from one place. And think about what's the vision. You know, think about how am I going to get the right mindset in my business to embrace this technology. Think about what's the right operating model. What's the right change management structure? Who are the right people in my business to be involved? And how do I choose the technology to make this successful? So I know I'm way over time. So I'll just finish with, I think, our 6 key learnings in this space, and I'll open up for a few questions. So yeah, I wanted to kind of also fuel some of the myths. So number 1, as I think I just said, set your goals and set your strategy. You know, have your fights with your CIO and IT early. I'm not going to do this all on SAP. Yeah, it's too expensive. We're going to use other tools and technologies that can sit on SAP. But you know, the other key thing here is make sure that your CIO is your friend. IT is your friend, not your foe. If you try and make them an enemy, you will fail. I'm sorry to say, because they all have access to your systems, the user access, the infrastructure. You have a dependency on IT, so make sure they're your friend. The second one here is start with the low-hanging fruit, because it's really important. I'm going to jump off just to remind myself. Yeah, it's really important to focus on quick wins and build maybe some videos around those quick wins, and because that really helps to motivate and to inspire your own workforce. So keep that in mind. The third one is, there's lots of questions around, should we do this top-down? Should we do this bottom-up? Should we build a citizen-developer model? We would say yes to all 3. So the top down gives you a good view of what your priorities should be. The bottom up actually helps to get the engagement from your workforce. So that's also a good idea. Citizen development helps you really scale these concepts, but we don't think you should have a robot for every person. So some of you may have come across UiPath selling this term of every single person in your business can have a robot, and it sounds wonderful. However, there's many people in your businesses that don't know how to use a macro and don't know how to use a pivot table. So those guys are not going to be great as developers using these technologies, even though it's no code, low code. So bear that in mind. The fourth one is, does process come first or does automation come first? And again, this is a big debate. So, I'm a Lean Six Sigma guy by background, and part of me wants to say process comes first, but the problem is that's often an excuse. People say, oh, we need to standardize. And you come back 2 years later and go, oh, we're almost standardized. So your problem is one of time. So I think you have to be quite pragmatic about this. If you can standardize and you can do that quickly, you should certainly do that. But if you can get a return on investment without standardization and you can release the human effort from the process, you should be pragmatic and you should definitely do that. So don't think you need to standardize all your processes. Sometimes the right answer is just to automate. And then my final two, you'll see are, the change piece. So don't just focus on the project. Think about changing the mindsets of your people. And this is really important. I'll give you an example. We worked with a company that introduced RPA in their manufacturing department in Germany. No one used it. The German team refused to use the RPA because they said, if I use this RPA, you're going to come up with more RPAs, and some of us are going to lose our jobs. So we're not going to use it. So one of the biggest things that organizations underestimate is the change challenge. And here, you need to change the people's mindsets to really build a change mindset. And that's a key part of this. You want your teams experimenting, playing with this technology, thinking about how can ChatGPT help them in their jobs? How can AI-generated art help them do things better? How can chatbots, RPA, BPM, all of these tools and technologies exist, make them better? What you don't want is you don't want people saying, well, what's going to happen to my job? So you also need to think about your communication strategy to deal with some of that resistance within your organization. And then my final takeaway is be bold and experiment. Yeah, look, I think if you think small and you're going to do small things, you'll achieve small things. Yeah, if you think bold, you challenge your organization, you experiment with this technology, there's no gap to what you can achieve. And that's the final takeaway from me. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions?
Yes. Couple questions.
Yes, Carlos.
You come back one slide. I just wanted to add on the. Thank you. I just wanted to add on the blue tile regarding the process automation, this apparent contradiction that there is not. Actually, for me here, the secret is that after automation, you can keep standardization. So you have to standardize the processes after they are automated, the robots, the bots. So there is no stop to standardization. It's just done in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. It's a journey, right? Just because you've automated doesn't mean you can't standardize afterwards. But actually, once you've automated, the benefit of standardization goes from there to there. And so you may decide, I want to focus on other things. But you remind me of a good example. We work with a company called Richemont. They own Cartier and IWC and Panerai, some of the watches I love. And they don't have a shared service center. They have a completely decentralized model. And they used automation to standardize. So they said, okay, we're going to create this automation in this particular market, and then everyone has a choice. You can do this yourself, the way you're doing it today, and it's really inefficient, and it costs you people, or you can use this robot that we've already built. And actually, it was amazing. They had 13 markets standardizing to this robot that was created, and it created that momentum to standardize. So yeah, I completely agree. It's not just a case of you have to standardize before you automate. We've got questions here, one in the middle, and then Oscar at the back.
Hello. My question was is regarding what you said before, related the love relationship between GBS and IT. In your case, is IT within the shared services or as a separate business unit? How do you deal with that? Because in my shared services, they are, you know, a peer.
Yes.
And
I think
it's
the
either
reality...
you win or they win. It's never us. So.
Yeah, I think the reality is IT is not always in scope for GBS and shared services. More often, they're separate rather than combined. So even if they're separated, I think you have to forge a good relationship. And this was a learning from the early phases of RPA. Yeah? So at the start of RPA, everyone said, oh, let's do this without IT. It's too slow, they put us on the list, and it takes forever to do anything. So let's do it without IT. And they thought, let's get started. And they get started, and there's a blocker. Yeah? There's a blocker, we can't access this system, the infrastructure's not set up, we can't actually move to unattended, etc. And then IT at that point are like, yeah, maybe we'll get around to it in 6 months. And so you lose the momentum of the program. So the key thing is, even if they're outside of shared services, have them involved in the program, get them involved as a stakeholder, put them in your governance, in your steering committee, treat them as a friend, not as competition.
We did that in the beginning, but then the problem is that after I'll explain what I said in the beginning. We didn't exclude them. They got excluded by themselves. So in the first 2 years, we were like great friends with all the committees, and we even created an RPA responsible in IT and everything. As long as the RPA automations were very low, so less than 100, it was okay. When we reached 500, then they thought, we have a problem here.
Yeah, we should own it.
They are shadowing us. So we need to fix this. So they started saying that RPA is not actually a solution, it's a temporary solution, and it should last maximum 1 year. So that causes us a problem, is that why should I be investing, you know, my time and my money for something that it will get paid in 1 or 2 months, but I don't get the benefit, a real benefit in the next 5 years. So how do you deal with that?
It's a political hot potato. Yeah? Because when you get to a certain scale, there's a debate. Like, who should be maintaining robots? Yeah? Should it be IT? Should it be GBS? Should it be finance? Should it be HR? Should it be the business unit? The answer is it doesn't really matter as long as you can get your business behind it. As long as you can get everyone aligned and you can stop the resistance. Now, a lot of businesses actually, when they get to that scale, they do move it to IT. Because IT will suddenly have a new version of the ERP and it affects 500 robots. So you need to make sure they're closely linked. But I think if you're not going to go down that route, you have to get their buy-in to whatever you do. So I think you guys need to get in a room and work out what the right future is for looking after that COE.
Okay, last question and short answer.
I can't promise you that.
I make it a very long question in that case. But it's actually a bit in line, but there was one thing which I was missing, and that's ownership. Because now every shared service center, GBS or integrated services, they talk about end-to-end. Everywhere where we come, we see multiple owners in the end-to-end process. And so you start to implement robotics, optimization, but you're not the owner. So in this case, your example was IT, but we have many owners in the process. How do you deal with it? Because I can assume you engage that on a daily basis.
Yes, it's a really good question. So our view on this is really direct, which is the process team is the owner. Yeah? So the operational team that has the automation still owns it. And we think that's a really important message because you don't want them saying, this was done to me. This is owned by the central team. I don't own this process anymore. They have to own that. And one of the tricks you can play is also turn off the automation, maybe 1 or 2 days a year. And this is actually, we're joking, it sounds like we're joking, but we do this with a particular business because we want to force that ownership. So we say on a particular day, we want to test your business continuity in case this broke. So we just turn off the automation and we see what happens. And if they're not able to operate without that automation, that means that business continuity plan isn't as great as they thought it was. So yeah, I think that ownership is really important and you should test it.
Cool. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very good.